there's so much wine sitting out there right now, and we've got to do something different than the traditional 750 ml bottle. That's clearly not working. Wine sales are down. So we have to elevate, we have to provide an experience, and we have to the wine industry has to set itself apart.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And I am in studio today in beautiful Southern California, about to have a conversation with Abby Bogle out there in Lubbock, Texas. Introductions in just a second. Hey, have a listen or watch Zaya Muradian. Such an interesting conversation about the Armenian wine trade, and she is in charge of the Vine and Wine Foundation, which is a government-run agency to help promote wines in a region that most people have not heard of. Have a listen to that. But not while we're here to have a conversation with Abby. She is owner and CEO of Small Lot Bottles. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Paul.
What's going on in Lubbock today?
Well, I was actually joking about this morning. It's October and it's supposed to be fall, but we're at 90 degrees. So it's nice and toasty, but at least we're looking forward to some cooler temperatures and getting ready to kick off fall and go into this OND time. As y'all know who listen to this, I'm sure it's pretty busy for everyone, but we're rocking and rolling right now and starting off the month strong over here.
I think I mentioned this when we were off camera a little bit, that I had done some business with McPherson Winery, and you mentioned that they're still in business out there. And I bought Rhone varietals from them. Is that sort of the main varietal area for that part of the wine trade in Texas?
And so they are big influences with the French Rhone varietals, and then of course some Italian and Spanish varietals as well. So anything that grows well with that warmer, we might as well, it's not warmer, hot and dry climate is what it is. But Kim McPherson has been such a pioneer, especially leading the French Rhone and Spanish and Italian varietals in Texas. And so, like I was telling you, Paul, that was my first job in the industry. So I am very fortunate to be able to learn from such a pioneer in this space.
As we were trying to find a way in which I got tagged by the state of Texas, and for the listeners, understanding the 3-tier process in America to shipping alcohol and wine particularly, I was trying to find a way with Jim to produce a methodology to get wines in the hands of the consumers of Texas. I just did it anyway. We never reached an agreement, not because he didn't feel like it was too much work. So we just started shipping, and I got tagged by the state. They made me sign a contract saying I would never do it again, but continued to do it. And then we finally paid our taxes on it, and everything was fine. But we actually had an auditor come from the state of Texas and sit right behind me here, and figure out how much sales tax I owe them.
Yeah, they come in and do those audits quite a bit. Was that pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Oh, way pre-COVID.
Yeah. So COVID didn't do, that wasn't a good time for any of us. But I have noticed most of those TABC audits are more so through email now. They don't actually come into your facility.
I was shocked that she showed up with a book and a computer, and we gave her a room, and I don't know, we had done it right. She just they just were checking on us. They did it twice, actually. Anyway, not why we're here. We had this conversation, but your name came to me through Paul Mabray, one of the great digital sort of think tank people in this industry, about where the wine trade should go, and wine being a very specific and deliberate type product. That's we need people like that. And he suggested we have a conversation because of some of the things you're doing that are unique in the small lot bottle world. Tell me what Small Lot Bottles does.
Yes. So Small Lot Bottles, we are a fractionalization company. So that might be a fancy term for some of you watching, but really what it is we are taking wine from 750 ml bottles or from bulk, and then we're putting it into a mini bottle. So just like this, you might be able to see that. So here is one of our bottles. And so these are 100 ml bottles, but we do work with primarily 100 ml is what we are fractionalizing the wine into. And so our biggest mission here is to get more liquid on lips and to be able to provide a service to our wineries, to our corporate gifting, so that way we can get wine out to the masses. And really, we want these newer generations to start drinking wine again. And having the fractionalization option is a great entry to that. So they don't have to commit to a full bottle. They get more of an experience. We can package these in single serve formats or in a 4-pack, 6-pack, so on and so forth. And of course, on the education side as well, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit more. But that is really where our main focus is just trying to get more wine and more liquid on lips.
That's an interesting thought. And let me just for the listeners sort of divide this out for them. 100 ml bottle, 100 milliliters. Since most American are on the ounce in the UK system, would be if you were to take a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, a standard bottle of wine, and you were at a restaurant, you'd probably pour 5 glasses from that, something in that range, and that would be 150 ml or 150 milliliters worth of wine for each glass.
Mhm.
You're talking about a little smaller than that. So maybe, what would be a 6 bottle pour or six pours per bottle kind of thing. And there was a company that started years ago.
Tasting room online.
Yeah, well, that's really old.
But there's
Go ahead.
Vinove, there's Tubes USA, Wine and Tubes. There's a few out there, but all kind of a little bit different.
The reason I brought that up was I thought a tasting room was an old company owned by Geerlings and Wade, I think, at the time or at some point. Um, I thought when the idea came out that this was kind of whack. And I'm an old
Right.
guy, I'm an old traditionalist. This is 750 ml. Why would you want anything else? But the company that I'm referring to, I can't remember the name still, um, survived it all. And the idea was you got 3 different test tube size samples, and you could get online and buy more if you wanted. Is that the continued model of most of these companies that offer you a chance to taste a wine in 100 ml and then buy more?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely one angle of it. That is not so much our angle of it, but that is one. And so we do offer that for certain winery clients, for corporate gifting clients, of course. Depending on what it all depends on what their objective is and their call to action, and then we formulate whatever that package looks like. But I think one of the biggest things is what we know is the brand awareness. It's using excess inventory. We can't guarantee that people, especially this new generation, I think when we're talking the younger millennials, the new Gen Zs, we can't guarantee that they're going to get this and then go buy another bottle of wine. We would hope that, and we're doing some data tracking to see what those type of conversion rates are. But we do know that it is brand awareness. It's getting an experience out to our customers or their customers, and also gaining attraction for new potential customers within that as well. And then like we talked about, there's so much wine sitting out there right now, and we've got to do something different than the traditional 750 ml bottle. That's clearly not working. Wine sales are down. So we have to elevate, we have to provide an experience, and we have to the wine industry has to set itself apart in this, when we're talking about alc bev in general. Single serve formats have been in the market forever when it comes to little shooter sizes. You can buy, beer is essentially, that's a different conversation, but that's where we have to kind of differentiate ourselves, and that's where we come in to really provide that service. So the winery doesn't have to do it, but we are here to lend a hand and say, hey, let's think differently about this. Let's look at some different formats and different packaging, and what could this look like, and what's your biggest objective?
So you're still kind of on the wholesale side, or does it sound like you're selling some of these brands as well? Are you strictly, for instance, you mentioned early on that you would pour out 750 mLs and put them back into 150 or 100, um, or you could take in a Tetra Tech bladder of wines and do it that way. But are you then sort of a job shop for them, or are you actually have them on your website selling the wines as well, or both?
Well, a little bit of both, but so really where we are selling things on our website is for one of our education clients. So we do all of the education for Napa Valley Wine Academy. They're our anchor client, as well as Court of Masters of Americas, as well as Culinary Institute of America. So all of their wine education we handle. So certain courses from there are sold online, but then we essentially have a service contract. They tell us which wines they want. We go out and source those. So we're a full winery. We're a full winery, a full tax paid wine bottling house. We have all of our licenses for direct to consumer shipping. But on the winery side, it is a little bit different where we're more of a service. They provide us the wine and then they're just asking us to bottle it down, package it, and then get it back to them or ship it to their final customer as well. Just kind of depending on how that partnership looks like. It might vary from client to client and depending where that winery is located.
And so, how did you stumble across? I mean, I see the need. Certainly, there's a need out there. Again, I was old guy, so I'm like, well, who would do this? But obviously, it's working. Um, what, How did this happen? I mean, just for fun?
Yeah, so
That's not fun.
a little bit of background. So Taste of Confidence was the original company name. It still is Taste of Confidence, but we've added DBA small lot bottles. And so Taste of Confidence was started by two brothers in Australia. And then I came on to launch the United States side of the business. And that was all right after COVID. I mean, my goodness, I wish we were 6 months earlier. It would have been a game changer. But it was right after COVID, right after things were kind of back online in 2021. And that's where we started with Napa Valley Wine Academy as our anchor client. And we still hold true to that. We work with them on a daily basis, and we're so fortunate for that partnership. But we over the last several years, we just saw a few different things within the industry and where I was going back and forth to Napa and seeing what was needed. The original owners had a different kind of direction that they wanted to go with more of a tech side. So, of course, like Paul Mabry, like all the tech things. And I was like, look, I think we just really need to offer a solution. We need it seamless, we need it efficient, and we need it simple. And we need a very low risk for these wineries. And so I really wanted to align ourselves with just bottling, production, and fulfillment. And they wanted to do more tech side. So they're kind of focused on there. And then that's when I rebranded to Small Lot Bottles. And we have now really aligned and partnered with some great people with Corvin. We're the North American hub for Corvin Vinitas and for their bottle, which is this one that I just showed, and then also their equipment, and then as well as wine and tubes. And so we offer a few different formats, which has really helped set us apart because now we can give the client exactly what they would like.
It's very interesting thought process that you've been through, and I think what Mr. Mabray, brought you into the fold here because there's a whole conversation about innovation in the wine trade. I consider innovation on many, many fronts, as anybody else would. There's technical innovation, there's packaging innovation, there's manufacturing innovation, there's
Right.
experiential innovation. So this is an interesting thought process because I noticed that the can section. So I'm trying to focus now on the sort of serving size. And a few years ago during the summer, I tasted 100 canned wines, and they were
Oh,
bottled. They were canned in 4 or 5 different sizes. There was 200, 250, 375, 500, and even I don't think there were any 750s. But those a few of those are standard looking cans for people that like 375 is a beer can and the 500 is like a large beer can.
right.
But I don't see that. We did okay with it, but I tasted a lot of really good wines in them. I tasted vintaged, appellated wines that I thought were pretty good, Lodi Cabernet and one called Freak Show and whatever. But I see the section of those wines at the markets continually dropping in
Decreasing.
size.
Hmm.
What's happening
And
there?
I think it's the can. I think honestly, it's the can concept, and I'm not sure. I know there's been innovation with that between the aluminum liners and different things, not degrading the wine and stuff. So I know they've made great advancements, but I think there's wine is a traditional elevated beverage, and so it was just like we had to innovate going from PET to glass. We have to wine, we want other people to drink wine and we want them to have fun and to be able to experience it, which is what we get to do with these mini bottles because it takes the stress out of it. You're not buying a $150 bottle of wine that you may or may not like. But what I think on the can side is it doesn't represent the wine well. It doesn't represent the industry well or the tradition associated with the wine industry and the hundreds and hundreds of years of winemaking, I don't believe it supports that well. It doesn't support that initiative. And if we're talking to that younger generation, they're going to go pick up a can of White Claw or a can of High Noon before they ever go grab a can of wine.
Yeah, that makes
Uh-huh.
sense.
And that's
There
the
was a
end of the
woman.
day. We've got to find we got to get these new generations to drink wine because we're running out of baby boomers. We're running out like we're gonna, the people who have kept the wine industry alive are, not drinking as much or passing on and, different things. So we've got to think differently there.
Well, as a baby boomer, I think of my mortality regularly. So
I know.
that's why I
Well,
drink
hey,
more wine.
keep drinking wine and I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yes. Actually, what happened was when I sold the Wine of the Month Club, the gentleman that bought it, or the group that wanted nothing to do with the stuff I'd collected, and a lot of it I collected during COVID because people were buying whatever I asked them to buy. And so I have this
Right.
incredible collection somewhere floating around 25 to 3,000 bottles that I had no place to put. So I
Right.
finally built the cellar at home, but they're all 750s. I can tell you that much. It's interesting. Let me just sort of play devil's advocate here for a second. I've had many, many guests on the show. One woman insisted that Lafitte Rothschild would be in a can one day. And of course, that would never happen. I've had another woman on the show of a brand that was bottling things in 375s. Like that was something new. I mean, there's 375 has
Mhm.
been around since I worked my dad's store in 1972. I didn't find that innovative and being pitched as premium wine in a small format, and it wasn't premium. I mean, it really wasn't premium. But then the devil's advocate part is, Whiny Baby, which is this Gen Z idea that just got bought by Gallo. It's all in 750s. Does that mean the Gen Zs are
Really?
drinking 750s?
Well, do you know what type of varietal it is, or are there multiple? Because I think that's has a big role to play in it. And the studies that I've seen is, rosé and sparkling still all-time highs. And so I think, you see, let's go to brunch with my girlfriends, let's get bubbles, let's get rosé, let's have a girls' night, rosé all day, all of those things. So I'd be interested to know just on that whiny baby side what those varietals are. Because is it a deep heavy cab? Because if it is, let's find, we need to continue to do that research to see where that is. But do you know that off the top of your head?
Just a number. I don't know exactly. I know there's a few. I don't remember if there's a deep red. I think there might be a deeper
Pinot Noir,
rosé and a lighter red.
pumpkin.
I think it's a crown cap. I have to look that up. But it's kind of
I
funny
think
because I was driving home. Go ahead.
I think the crown cap and just that convenience piece it's such a huge piece, especially in today's time. Everyone wants something convenient. They're not carrying around corkscrews. They're not, doing different things. But I mean, I guess with the crown cap, you would still need, it's not screw cap. Yeah. So
See,
you're
look at
still
this.
gonna need.
I got my screw cap. I got my corkscrew right here on my keychain. Look at it.
See, there you go. That's my kind. See, I always have the corkscrew with the knife on it, and so it gets
Yeah.
taken every time I'm at the airport because I forget to clean out my purse. But yeah, that is an interesting point that you bring up there with that brand.
Well, I was thinking about today driving home. I had gotten an email from somebody that was really, really made me angry. And I thought to myself, what a whiny baby. And then I realized that the company that sent me the email is a bunch of Gen Zers. And I thought, hey, that's where the name came from because they're just whining about stuff. And I was like, give me a break. And I don't
Yeah,
mean to diss all the Gen Zers. I raised 3 millennials. That's not a problem. I get it. I'm a baby boomer. I'm sure my parents had their opinions of my personality traits as a group. So you have then bottling lines there. You have all you need. You can with the I spent a lot of time in packaging shows. I used to have packaging
yeah.
lines here where I box boxes, so I have full understanding of how those machines work. Do you have the test tube size, and you have the 375 size, and so what's the largest format that you bottle?
We don't really go over 187, and that's really just if a client really specifies the 187, and that's of course, as we both know, been around for ages now. So we
Right.
really like to stay in the 100 ml, but do a 4-pack. So then you're getting, just over a half a bottle of wine, about 13, 14 ounces of wine right there, but it's more of that experience. And so whether it's a gift, whether it's Christmas time or birthday or girls' night or whatever it is, you're still able to provide that experience. So 187s are great, if we land, different contracts and different partnerships where that's just what they request, we can absolutely do it. It's just not something that we put a lot of focus in.
So, what for the listeners? 187 is commonly called a split, and it's was mostly used in the old days for the little bottles of champagne you might buy at a grocery store or maybe on an airplane that you'd get that.
Which I think that single serve size is still great, especially when we're talking about these new generations and sparkling like you bring up. I think people love that. People love a quick, easy, glass that they can just grab, throw in their cooler bag, whatever it is, and they don't have to commit to that full amount. But what's nice about our 100 ml is it's giving you just that perfect taste. You're at 3.4 ounces. It's TSA friendly, so you can pack it in your carry-on, you don't have to
Right.
check it, which is
Wow,
really
what an
nice.
interesting thought. I
Yeah,
never thought of that.
well, it works really well for gifting. So if you're out in Napa, we had kits launch at Oakville Grocer last month. So if you're out in Napa on, husband wife trip or girls trip and you're like, "Hey, I need to take home some souvenirs." Boom, you can grab that at Oakville Grocer and then you're doing it is throwing it in your suitcase and you're going through carry-on or in your carry-on through TSA and you're totally fine. So it's the perfect thing that you can take home to your mother-in-law who's watching the kids, your dog sitter, whatever that may be. But that's why we like that size. And then specifically we like that size so we can have more than just one varietal. We don't want to just have one varietal in there.
So you could bring on the plane a little 6-pack or a 4-pack of 100s,
Mhm.
and that would qualify as long as they're separated by the container itself.
Yes. Yes. So
That's
of course you cannot consume it. Well, I mean, so they say you can't
uh,
consume it if you don't get caught. Who am I to say? But but it goes through.
I'm not gonna make judgments about the people who are listening to the show whether they're gonna try and uncork a bottle
Yeah.
of wine or a test tube full of wine. But I just thought of something. I have very, very close friends here in Los Angeles who started a RTD cocktail called Knox and Dobson, really quite special. And I even had a taste test against my classic martini and my classic Manhattan, and I barely squeezed by the win with my son-in-laws because they're so good. And I
Oh
make all my friends.
wow.
And but one of their marketplaces that they've stumbled across accidentally, and I'm thinking about this for some of these wineries, is in-room mini bars because
Mhm.
you're not going to take out a 50 ml little airplane bottle. You're not going to, this is already mixed. They're premium. And I thought, we were just in Napa at the Yountville Estate just last week, and there was a
And
bottle of
how great is
Mondavi
that?
Cab. What's that?
Well, exactly. And who's opening up a 750 ml bottle of
Nobody. I
wine?
always bring it home.
Exactly, you bring it home or it's wasted, and so that's where we are in talks with a few different, hotels where, "Hey, would you like this? Because these are the brands we can put in there." And so there are some different conversations that we have there where we bring the wine brand to actually like a new customer base, essentially.
So when a wine brand comes to you, what's their typical, like, let's turn it around, the old sales, here's my problem. Do you have a fix? What do they describe as their typical need?
Well, their typical need is, do you have a list of people who would drink our wine and they want to sell wine, which I get. And I mean, that's on one hand where it's always like, okay, well, who's going to buy my wine? And do you have a list of people to introduce it to? And it's like, no, we don't have the list, but we have the concept that will help you target a new list. And so that's kind of, that's like a funny, people always say, like, well, we want, they want a list of people to send their wine to. And it's like, that's what you're supposed to be growing at your tasting room.
Yeah,
And
right.
so for the most part, it's them coming to us to just as a service to bottle the wine and package it so they can use it as retail kits, direct to consumer kits. Each one's a little bit different. Internal tasting kits for new vintages, new winery releases or grand openings, getting the word out. So each one is a little bit different. We haven't quite cracked the code on like, okay, every winery is going to want this because each winery is different based on size. Are they a boutique urban winery? Are they commercial? Are they enterprise? What is it? Because each one's a little bit different there. So we see a wide range of different use cases when it comes to the winery side.
It's interesting. There's a whole bunch of statistics out there, metrics, and I'm from a marketing standpoint, I have my definite opinions on marketing metrics. However, um, there is that metric that says most wine that's bottled and sold in a supermarket is consumed within 2 years or 48 hours or whatever the number is. Certainly not meant to age. And as I think
Right.
in general knowledge in the wine world, small formats don't age as long as larger formats. And so it's interesting that that the sizes around, and obviously the longevity of the wine is not going to be as long as even a 750 or a Jeroboam or a 3 liter, but that's not meant to do that.
No, it is not. And so we have a shelf life of about 12 months, especially on our Corbin bottle. It's about 12 months shelf life. And but we always want to encourage people like, don't hold this. This is gift it, enjoy it. Or if the winery is contracting it and we bottle just in time. And so we have a really quick turnaround time. They tell us, "Hey, like, we have an event middle of November. Can we get you wine?" So we want it to be the freshest, best experience for their customers. But exactly, we're not holding this wine, we're not aging this wine, we are drinking it, we're enjoying it, and then you're gifting it on to your best friends, your family members, whatever that may be, because our hope is that you had such a great experience there. So then it's like, "Hey, let's keep doing this." And that's really where, it's kind of funny because especially on our education side, there's a lot of like, "Okay, well, what's the shelf life conversations?" And we have to know that, and that's super important. But our biggest thing is we want students or customers to be able to consume these quite quickly so that way they can enjoy it versus hold on to it.
So do wineries really send you like a pallet, for what's that, 560
Yeah.
bottles, and say, pour this into, the vat? Now let's just talk about that for a second from a technical standpoint. We always pitched to our customers all these years that wine is a pretty resilient product. Actually, it travels many times across the ocean, jostled around in the boat, at the bottom level. Temperature is important, but vibration is just as important. Light sources are important. So those things all play into the longevity of a wine. Is that bottle of 187 or 100 ml a good representation of that wine once it's been bottled? Let's see, vented, bottled, uncorked, poured, then rebottled?
Yes, so we have done quite Corbin, whenever they first launched this glass and equipment, they did quite the extensive beta testing with brands of the caliber of like Harlan. And we have now come in with so many of our own beta testings, doing side by sides with several different brands. I mean, we on average have about 400 SKUs in house in inventory, and so all of that is side by side tested. We have a very intense HACCP and quality control process to catch any things because there is a chance that a bottle comes in corked. So we check everything at time of arrival, we check everything before bottling, and then we have a true process all the way through the finish line. But we have done so many side by sides in person with clients and everything. And so it does represent the wine exactly the way it should be, and that's one of what's important to us mostly is keeping the integrity of the wine. We don't ever wanna put your name on a product that you don't have the stamp of approval on. So we do a lot of testing and pilot projects before we do, full large production runs.
I didn't even think of that cork bottle. I mean, there's
Yeah,
actually I've seen a little bit of an incidence lately from it. But I'm trying to look at my emails here. That's why I looked distracted. But I think the Corvin developer, the guy is coming on the show. He's out in LA for something soon, and he's coming on to talk about it. And we used to see that all the time here. Obviously, our tasting room every Tuesday. I would say half of the vendors would use a Corvan for the wines. Obviously, if you don't have to open a whole 750 to pour
right.
off a couple of ounces at an account. So I'd say about half of them used it. But I'm interested to hear from this gentleman when he shows up. So what is the Coravan brand there that you have? What are they? What's unique about it?
So it's the Corbin Minitas is a machine. It's not like the needle. I mean, it's a similar technology to the needle, but it's not the actual, little handheld Corbin, what they're known for.
Yeah.
So what you can see here is there's a sticker over here, but let me just kind of remove this for all intensive purposes of this podcast so y'all can really see. So the bottle is never uncapped. So this bottle goes into a machine and then it fills through here. And so this bottle is purged with argon, then filled and then topped with argon. And so we use argon for everything, not nitrogen, and it's just a little bit softer on the wine. But so anyways, long story short, that's how that's a little bit different. So that needle technology is poking through there. So the only time the wine, the original 750 ml bottle, is exposed to any oxygen is only at the time of uncorking. And then that's all in an inert protected environment. And you're immediately sticking in the hose and then it starts pulling out. So it's what really unique, just not having to let these wines sit or wait for a cap or anything. So the second it is going in there, it's protected.
That's interesting. Let's talk about that for a second. Argon, just for the listeners, the inert gases that they use at wineries have been argon, have been nitrogen. I've even seen blends of that. There used to be a product that we sold here for a while called Private Preserve. There's another one called Vineyard Fresh, where it's where you use a little WD-40 tube, for lack of a
Right.
better description, and stick it in the bottle. And I use it at home, though. Frankly, having a not finishing off a bottle doesn't happen very often around my house, but if it does, it's good for a day or two.
Right.
Without any degradation. But once you get over half a
After,
bottle, it tends not to be that great.
oh
But
yeah,
this is a
you
great
can
solution.
absolutely. You can really and now, being in the wine industry, I get real picky. We were actually on a date night the other night and had a bottle or had a glass of wine, and my glass of wine tasted so much better than my boyfriend's. And we were laughing about that. And I was like, well, I was like, I have a brand new bottle, but it was different because depending on where that is in the bottle, like sometimes it's nice. It's a little bit more open. It's really, it's great. But if you held that one more day, you're going to have a problem. Whereas like a brand new bottle, it's a little tight. You need to let it open up. You need to aerate it a little bit. So it just brings out different characteristics of the wine. And it all determines on how long that bottle has been open and then where in the bottle is it at, because that makes a huge difference. And we were actually talking about it like, man, if restaurants even had, some type of concept of this, with maybe it's not 100 ml, maybe it's 187 or something, but it would just be interesting to see what their loss is like, and waste and some of those conversion numbers, because I'm sure there's quite a bit of it, because you never know if somebody's gonna be in and finish off that bottle in the next day, or if you're gonna just dump it down the drain.
I can tell you from experience, obviously, as you said, you're in the business, so you watch this. But my wife, I usually have martinis or Manhattan. So when I'm out, unless it's something very unique, but she, we're very peculiar, very conscious about what is in that glass when we order by the glass. And we've sent many, many, many glasses back for a
Right.
lot of
Mhm.
different reasons. And we even sent a bottle back the other day at Chichio because it was bubbly. And that's usually a heat
Oh,
problem, right? That's usually
yeah.
from heat. And they tried to tell me, which was kind of annoying, that this was the way the wine tasted. I go, look, roasted a Montalcino does not have bubbles. I can pretty much commit
I
to
can
that.
promise you. Yeah.
But
I
going
always
back to
love their answers. I'm like, okay, well, sure.
So then I gave her
We'll
my
go.
card on the way. I said, I've been doing this for 35 years and I tasted 100,000 wines and I can pretty much commit to you that's not the case. But let me tell you another quick story. We were in Monterey at the Concours Elegance. We were having an incredible time watching the cars drive down the street. This is the night before it starts. We're at a bar and I'm right in front of the waiter station, right next to it. And behind the bar backside, there was all these Crane Lake wines, which is a classic distributor, the Franzia Classic distributorship sold Crane Lake as a house pour for a lot of restaurants. Anyway, somebody had decided in their infinite wisdom to write giant black felt pen letters on the label what date they opened the wine. And the Pinot Noir that was front and center had been opened maybe 2 weeks earlier. I just happened to notice this. And a waitress came up and said, glass of Pinot to the bartender. He didn't even look at it. So he started to pour this right in front of me. And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
I go, that's coming back. He goes, what do you mean, sir? I go, well, look at the date. I go, even Crane Lake can't last that long with all the sugar in it. And
Right.
he goes, thanks a lot. Thanks you for stopping that. I mean, he appreciated it actually. And I thought, wow, what an interesting use this might be, even though on a per, and that leads me to another question, but on a per glass basis, it might be a little more money, but man, the depletion or the loss would
Right.
be considerably less.
Way considerably less. And it would be a little bit more. And I guess that's pretty much why restaurants, their glass price is the bottle price. So it doesn't matter if they sell one glass, they covered their cost on it. So I understand that concept, but I just also am like, but you're wasting. So, like, let's talk about the waste piece of it. Like, you're covering your cost, but then we're just wasting. Like, and I mean, that's a different conversation for a different time. But I think there will be some breakthrough and some innovation that comes in on the restaurant side, and I think we'll see it with newer restaurants popping up, it just depends on the demographic that they're tailoring to as well.
Well, that's partially true, I think, but forget the waste part, which yes, you're right. For the listeners, most restaurants get the bottle cost out of their first glass, but that first glass that would have gone out with this Pinot Noir would have upset somebody, and the
Right.
waiter had more time, and they had to go argue, and somebody might be intimidated to say this is bad because they don't feel like they have the confidence to do that, and so it has a whole bunch of ramifications that aren't just dollars and cents. What happened to the
Exactly.
plastic bottle movement? Are you doing any PET stuff?
We started with PET, but it's, again, not a good representation of the wine. The shelf life is not as long. It's 3 months, so it doesn't protect the wine, it doesn't protect the integrity of the wine, and that's what we hold true, and in our entire process is we have to keep that integrity of the wine from start to finish, and so I just didn't feel like we were putting out the best product we could, and I think there's probably some innovation. There's things that can happen on the manufacturing side of that. But I really, now that we're in glass, I don't see us ever going backwards. There's certain conversations that we have with certain larger corporations that are just like, hey, we just need it in PET, which I totally understand, but they get complaints 24/7. So it's the cost, cost from PET to glass is significant, but I think it's worth it. And we're seeing right now that it definitely has been worth it making that switch because we had a lot of PET heat issues as well. So given a glass can get warm and they're gonna fill it and be like, "Oh, that's warm," but the effects on the wine are not as what they would be with the PET bottle.
There's a couple of positives and some negatives. One of the positives is you can put 36 PET 750s in the same weight box as 12 glass
Mhm.
bottles. So they're a pound each instead of 3 pounds each. And, as a restaurateur, for instance, if I'm pouring it from behind the curtain anyway, I'm not sure I care if I can save the space on having PET. On the flip side of that, there's a few negatives. One of them, I had a bottle here that I sat here forever. It was probably one of the first PET bottles I ever bought. I'm talking, it's like an 87 Merlot from South Africa.
Oh, wow.
And the lining started to come off of the plastic. So this got this bizarre sort of design going on. And you're going, oh, that's so gross that the lining, the
Right?
food grade lining was separating from the plastic itself. And it was turning into this weird thing. It started to suck in,
Oh,
started
yeah.
to, the vacuum pack. And then the other negative that I thought, and I had the guy on the show, and he was just doing his job, but he was a PhD out of Cornell, and his job was to find a food grade lining that would hold up to wine for 24 months. And just thinking of that's kind of disgusting. But
Right.
Coke is like that. You can't use the Coke grade lining, but just the fact that you're doing research and you're using molecular biology to figure it out, I go, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I I don't know. It's there, and there's pros and cons on the glass side for sure. As you know, breakage and cost and everything else. But I just think the pros outweigh the cons for the glass compared to PET.
Well, that's interesting thought too. That which just fleeted my brain. Um, do you think this affects wineries? Direct to consumer stuff, which is I did all my career. Shipping wine is expensive. People would come in here with a high punted bottle and the thick glass, and it was tapered, and they go, "Isn't this cool?" I go, "No, that's 5 pounds, and I got to pay for, and I get charged 5 pounds, and I only get money from my customers for 3 pounds. So
Three
I don't
pounds,
really like
exactly.
them, right? So is there a DTC? Well, we already mentioned a couple of the brands that do this, but from a winery standpoint, is there a DTC component to this,
Oh,
direct to consumer?
absolutely. So, definitely on the direct to consumer side. So, we see that a lot. We have winery clients that put these on their website for stocking stuffers, for advent calendars, whatever it may be. We have a full custom advent calendar for this year as well. And then they're shipping it direct to consumer. So, they're running marketing campaigns. We're also equipped to ship direct to consumer, but it just kind of depends on what size brand we're dealing with, if we're gonna go to one of their 3PLs or if we are going to ship it, internally. But really, it's a huge play. The cost of shipping, though, yes, they're getting, like, 4 different varietals, but the cost of shipping is actually not that significantly cheaper. Weight is a huge thing, so we're saving on weight, but we still have the adult signature, the fuel surcharge, the rural surcharge, all of these surcharges, so we're still up there no matter what at north of $20 to ship these ground. And so it's just, especially during the summer months, with the heat and everything, we want to ship UPS 2-day air. And for a 6 pack of wine going UPS 2-day air, you're looking at $30. So it's not much cheaper than shipping, you know, a 750 ml bottle. And that's just because, one of these days I would love to understand UPS and their reasonings for everything, but we have to have them, and so we have to pay for it. Really is what it is at the end of the day.
I don't need me tell me about it. I found one of my dad's charge cards from 1986 going through some stuff, and we were charging 275 for and
Wow.
that's less than just the adult signature alone for a 2 pack. But here's one of the fallacies of UPS, which now I don't have to worry about them. I mean, they literally UPS before we switched to FedEx, and we switched to UPS after their strike in 2007 or whatever it was. It just made me so
Right.
mad. But they, because it was their way or the highway, and it still is kind of like that anyway with
No, no.
FedEx. However, think about this for a second. If you're receiving, and I know friends of mine that belong to 3, 4 clubs, I'm as a wholesaler or a retailer would receive samples all the time. Daily, I would receive boxes. And they're getting that adult signature at whatever it is now, $3 or whatever it is, for every package that comes to
Right.
my door that day. But there's only one delivery. And that just really used to annoy me
Well,
'cause
exactly. There's no rhyme or reason to it. So yeah,
no.
it, yeah, they're make I don't know. They make so much money, and that's great for them. But I feel like there is, some ways that it would be nice to be able to work together on that, because it doesn't make sense, especially for you. It should be like you pay. I don't know. There should be some system where you pay X amount a month or whatever. You upload your ID, and then you just know that if that name comes across the database, like, we're good. We don't need to charge it. Um, but who knows? I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that we could do to make that a little bit easier, but we're probably not going to move the needle very much, to be quite honest.
No,
So we just
that's not
have
gonna
to work
happen.
work around it.
I can tell you 1988, so I'm really dating myself. Nobody cared. FedEx would come or UPS would come to the door. You had to handwrite the manifest. You could throw $100 in the truck and put 50 on the manifest. It
Right.
really wasn't discussed. And it didn't really matter where it was going, though it was still illegal. But I got to the point where I had the head legal advisor for UPS on the phone with the head legal advisor from Missouri, because Missouri was a reciprocal state at the time, and got them to meet heads. and allow shipping. And so that had never been done before.
Oh,
I had the three of them on the phone, but you could have access to those people at that time. Now it's like
right.
impossible.
Now, oh yeah, now you're gonna have, and now it's even worse because it's not even just like customer service. Now you're gonna go through a whole AI set of people before you even get to speak to
Before you get
somebody,
them,
and it's oh, it's right. I don't know. I'm way more old school when it comes to that. I love some efficiencies of technology, and then there's others where I'm like, I just want to talk to a person, please. And I don't know how many times I have to hit 0 for you to listen to me, but
well,
it's crazy out there.
let's we're at 45 minutes already, if you can believe it. But
Okay.
let me ask this question. I just came back from lunch with an AI writer, and they're writing some software for the real estate business. But I study AI and I use it all the time, and I just wanted to sit on this conversation to understand how they were thinking, because they're on the back end
Right.
training. Is there an application in the manufacturing side of wine? Now, I'm not talking about blends and stuff. I'm just talking about applying AI on your side when it comes to innovative packaging, innovative ideas. Have you used it
Yeah,
for
so we
much?
we use it all the time. We use it for mock-ups. We use it for creative ideas of like, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. What are taglines we could do?" I would say we use it more so for packaging and for those packaging mock-ups of like, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. Can you help us put this together?" And it does a fantastic job. We're not paying a designer for it. It's very easy to put in there exactly what you need. And then it's also really nice because when you're handing that over to your designer, to the manufacturer, to the print company, whoever that may be, it like it's perfect. It's exactly how they see it. You're not then sitting there trying to iterate your ideas from your head and then being like, no. So we cut down on time so much because we see it, we can talk to the computer really quick, get it exactly where we want it, and then pass that off versus going back and forth multiple times trying to nail down a design.
In 1993, I was given a test database for seller management. I ended up keeping it, and that's where my 100,000 wines that I tasted. Well, there's about 60,000 in that database I tasted on site. Um, and it used to frustrate me that I didn't have an app for it. It was written in DOS originally. And so the other day I sat down with this product called Reblay, and it's a app generation thing. Now this thing would have cost me 30 grand. In fact, I think I had it quoted years ago to write this app. It took about probably 3 or 4 hours worth of my time to train this thing as to when I go to a restaurant, I want to bring up on my phone uh, a field, vintage. I fill in the vintage, I want varietal, and I fill in the varietal, I want region, until I'm done loading that wine into my database of tasted wines. And so I can go to a regular tasting now and just pull my phone out instead of making notes. I just go tut, 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 tut. And it wrote
Right.
it. It wrote it like in 3 hours, and I pay $20 a
Wow.
month, for this
Right.
application.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
It
You don't
it's
even
I'm
know where.
so I know, it's really incredible, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for it when I wanna use it, not whenever other people are forcing me to use it, where I can't talk to people and different things. Because it is, I think that's one of the biggest things, like, we all want social interaction, and so it's hard whenever we see this economy and this world of where we're going and society of, like, everything is technology. And there's amazing benefits to that, and I use them on a daily basis, but there's just those cons there as well as there is with anything.
My wife says, "You're nicer to the AI person than you are me." So,
Oh,
and you're at the boyfriend stage, so maybe you're not
yeah,
there yet.
I know. Exactly, but
And so, just wrapping it up, it's just you out in the Napa side of things, or do you have a team up there, or what do you have?
so we do have, we are an AP in Napa with the Wine Foundry, and then I have an amazing board of directors and board of advisors we have some feet on the ground there, and then I'm back and forth, and then all of our headquarters are out of Lubbock, and I've got great
I'm sorry,
team with
Lubbock, yeah.
our director of sales and account managers, production managers. So we've got that satellite office in Napa, and then we just kind of divide and conquer as we need, depending on production.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you my quick Texas story, then we're gonna say goodnight. And that
Okay.
is a woman, you should listen to the podcast. Her name is Stephanie Franklin. There are actually two Stephanie Franklins on my podcast list, but one of them is the descendant of a Schenkel, and he founded Shankleville, Texas, which seems to be about an hour and a half the opposite direction of Paris, somewhere southeast of Dallas. And it's the Shankleville was considered the first free city post Civil War for Black
Okay.
Americans. And she's so drawn to this. She's a brilliant woman, actually. She's won some awards, but she went out to Shankleville because of it's her grandfather's stomping grounds, her great grandfather. And she's going to start a winery, and she has started a winery. I don't think she's planted yet, but I was so intrigued by the story that now that I get to go to Paris, I'm going to make the detour when it's time to go see what she does in an area that's never considered for wine. It's probably really hot,
Absolutely.
but she did the studies, and she's planting things like Tannat, and I think in Touriga
Okay.
Nacional, stuff like that, to
And
produce wine there.
where is it?
Shankleville seems to be, if you land in Dallas, you would go south and you'd go east a little, about an hour and a
Okay.
half. Seems to be about 3 to 4 hours from Paris, Texas, the opposite direction of Dallas. Well, I'm just so intrigued by this idea. And we were in Kerrville for a wedding
Oh, yeah.
years ago,
Mhm.
before the flooding, obviously, well before. And we stopped at a couple wineries, Messina Hoff, a couple other things on the way to
Oh, yeah.
Fredericksburg. And they were growing things like Sagrantino and some really interesting varietals for I suppose just
And
based
they're
on the
growing some
weather of the
Touriga
soil.
there now, lots of Tannat there now. Yeah,
Huh.
they're growing quite a bit over there. So where we are in Lubbock is the High Plains AVA, so we support about 85% of the fruit for all of the hill country. But they are starting to grow a little bit more every year. More vines are coming online and just trying out different varietals that'll work there with the heat plus the humidity, rain seasons and all of the things. But there's some potential there for sure. They're proving it.
So interesting. Well, you say hi to Jim McPherson. If you tell him that Paul K from Wine Talks, or Wine of the Month Club, you should remember that. We talked for a
Okay.
while. And
I will definitely do that.
And I hope we get a chance to meet, shake hands one day, and we'll do this again because I'm interested to see what the next step for you guys is and how you evolve with this product. It seems like a brilliant idea for wineries that are looking for opportunities to, to augment their product line and to make it more accessible for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yes, we will stay in touch. We've got a lot on the horizon.
Cheers.
Cheers.